Because what everybody said about King is he understood the overt racism of the South. He knew how to march through Selma, Alabama. But what King was completely disoriented by was by the covert, redlining, manipulative ways of the North. The racism that sits below the surface. The racism in Seattle where everybody is nice on the outside, friendly and inviting, and yeah, let's do lunch. I'll call you, don't call me. That's far more insidious and far more dangerous. Cities teach us that. Cities teach us that they sell inhalants in Guatemala City and Nairobi that children use to seduce themselves into thinking that they're not cold anymore and to suppress appetite. And those same companies cannot sell their products in the United States. And we continue to let those companies make a profit on children in the two-thirds world. Cities begin to reveal to us the worst about ourselves. Cities reveal to us that 76% of the drug users in the United States are white. But 75% of the young men and women that are prosecuted for drug charges are black. This is very, very important. Cities tell us the worst about ourselves. But cities also begin to communicate something in the worst. It tells us that this world and this kingdom is not the kingdom of our God. And it demands for us to be able to stand up for justice. You see, when I see the disparity about the way things are and the way that things should be, I'm invited to ask questions, hard questions. Justice. That's what the cities teach us to long for, to pray that justice rolls down like water, according to the prophet Amos. Cities also teach us the best about ourselves. My sons played ultimate frisbee at Aki Krosi. They were the city champs, ultimate frisbee, city champs. Really cool school. We had the worst test scores in the state of Washington, but we could kick ass when it came to ultimate frisbee. Sorry. For you Catholics, I said ass in the sermon. That's okay. For you Assembly of God people, I apologize. But this is the best part about ultimate frisbee. It was when my son said, "Dad, what time is our game on Saturday?" And I said, "Oh, our ultimate frisbee game is 10 o'clock in the morning." Clayton said, "Good, because all the Muslim players, if we play in the afternoon, they're all exhausted and tired and they can't play as good. And we need them because they're great players." And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Dad, it's Ramadan. We gotta have a morning game because they eat right before sunrise. And if they eat and play ultimate frisbee, we can win. And if they eat and then they wait all day, we'll lose." Ramadan has taken on very different significance in our household since Clayton played ultimate frisbee. Because he knows that kids that eat and then play win, kids that eat and then wait and then play lose. But the other thing that Ramadan did is this. My son came home and said, "Why don't I fast? I want to communicate what my Muslim brothers and sisters are communicating. That I want to be vulnerable. I want to create space for God." So the next Saturday at the Ultimate Frisbee game, I walked up to a bunch of Muslim fathers that I never knew before this, never talked to, and was able to say, "Hey, I need to say thank you. Because you, as my cousin, gave me a gift in my family and began to teach my son the discipline of fasting that my own faith tradition had no idea how to get their head or the heart around." See, cities teach us the best about ourselves. I was traveling through Mumbai, India, and I was traveling with a group of scholars. We were teaching a class there, and a group of scholars and me was traveling there. And we were in the home, the Mother Teresa's home there, the Sisters of Charity for the sick and the dying. And we're walking through all of these places, and all of a sudden we see this one room that I walked into with the sister that was giving us this great tour. And I said, "Who are these young women?" Older adolescent women. And she said, "Oh, these are the young children that have been abandoned because they're scarred, they're flawed, they're physically disabled, and so we get called by the hospital, and when they're babies, they literally are adopted by us. And we love these young women, and now they're growing into adulthood, but their physical deformities are so severe they really could never function in the dominant culture, and there's really not the infrastructure to help them, so they're here as our family members for the rest of their..." life. And right when she said that, this woman caught my eye. Her chin was sticking so far out of her face, it looked like she had some strange form of elephantitis. And her mouth and her nose were connected with this warped, weird, cleft palate sort of thing. I couldn't really tell where her mouth ended and her nose began. And her eyes, there was none. It was just empty sockets, and her forehead stuck out as far as her chin did. And my natural reaction was to look away, to not stare at this young woman. And as I began to look away, I don't hear God very much, but on that day I did, and I felt like God was saying, don't look away, you stare at her face, you capture her face, you remember her, you don't forget what she looked like. And as I looked at her, she began to sing. I have joy that the world didn't give me, and the world can't take it away. I have peace that the world didn't give me, and the world could... You see, I was the only blind man in that room. I was blind to who she was created to be. I was blind to the image of God in her. Oh, she was blind. She was blind to all of the opinions of the dominant culture that suffocates hope, that eliminates options, that says that you will never be anything, that you will never count for much. The mothers of Teresa, the sisters of Mother Teresa had wrapped their arms around her, and they had loved her in such a way. Cities teach us something. And what I want you to know is cities not only teach us to cry out for justice, cities teach us this great theological concept called transcendence. All this means, it's a 25-cent word theologians use. It just means that God is other or different than us. And thank God. God is other or different than us for our sake. But I want to tell you that in diverse, multicultural places, where you get to meet people that have different faith traditions and different experiences than you, when you see people that look differently than you, when you have conversations with people that solve problems different than you, you are introduced to a concept of God, the otherness of God, transcendence. So how do we do all this? How do we let the city become our teacher, right?